We've got a couple guests from CCS that are going to join us about some big announcements. Teresa Dillard and Trisha Matthew from the HEN program. Oh, sorry, somehow I muted. I don't know how that happened, but thank you for hitting recording. So if you do not want to be participate or be included in the recording, you can just stay on mute, keep your camera off, and throw things into the chat. We are quite skilled at making sure we are checking that chat, getting to it, even if it doesn't happen immediately. You can also individually message one of the coalition staff, and we're happy to kind of connect that way as well. If closed captioning is something that is helpful for you, you should be able to access that down along the bottom of the Zoom screen and hit live transcript closed captioning, and we can enable that for folks if that's helpful. We do love to see names, we do love to see faces, but it's hard, and sometimes you just can't show up in the Zoom box, and we get that, but we would love to see your name. We'd love to see your pronouns. We'd love to see your organization. So you can head up to your little Zoom box, click on the 3 ellipses and rename yourself. Please also introduce yourself in the chat to each other. It's hard to build community sometimes in a virtual environment, so we like to utilize all the tools we have to do that. This agenda is packed and amazing. So for those of you that have, are a time-honored guest here with us, I've been at the coalition for a little over a year now, and my office has often looked very blank and institutional, and I took extra time to spiff up my office for all the agenda items today that I'm very excited about. So as you can see here, we've got essential workers. Welcome to all of you showing up. We are the folks that this community needs just as much as other first responders, helping to keep this community safe and thriving. And we engage in our civic duties, and we encourage others to do so and share good information. And we've got a general election coming up. So voter registration and highlights is one of the things we're going to be doing. As I mentioned, we're going to have a short, brief period here at the beginning where we talk a little bit about the HEN waiver ending, some new programs coming in through the HEN program, and then a little bit more about stimulus checks and other tax credit benefits that if folks have not claimed them, there's still time to do that. And a little preview of that, but more coming down the pike there. And then we'll have budget advocacy. So if we can move on to our mission statement, and if I could invite one of you lovely folks to read our mission statement, that would be appreciated.
I can do it. Mission: we mobilize our community to challenge systemic causes of homelessness and advocate for housing justice.
Thank you very, very much. I appreciate that. And before we really jump into kind of our announcements around HEN, take a look at this preview of where we're going today. This is a picture of the coalition and coalition members back in 2019, fighting for and winning in 2019, the inflation adjustment legislation that we are now having to fight for again, and we will not back down. So stay tuned. We've got a lot of information to share around budget and advocacy for the coming days and weeks. So stick with us, invite folks if they're not here yet. We want them and as many folks as possible. Thank you, Rachel. So as I mentioned, this might have been on your radar, may not have been, but the IRS is trying to reach out to about 9 million folks that have yet to claim their 2021 stimulus checks and some other tax benefits like child tax credit, earned income tax credit. They are doing this the way they know how and is best available to them, which is via letters, As we know, that's not super, super helpful often for the folks that we're sometimes working with and supporting. So we are throwing together a very special briefing to inform you of all of this information, how you and your clients can access this and get those requests and applications in before the deadline, which is November 17th. So a little less than a month away. So I'm throwing in the registration for this special briefing. It is going to be on November 3rd from 1 to 2 p.m. So that's a Thursday, November 3rd, 1 to 2 p.m. We will definitely be emailing this out to folks as well, but I wanted to preview this for you and get this on your calendars, get the save date, get that link out there so folks can start registering and being aware of it. We want folks to get their money that they deserve and they need, right? So help us do that. The other thing we're really wanting to dive into a little bit today is the HEN waiver. So, and I'm thankful for our CCS colleagues, Teresa and Trisha, to step in and help me around this. But the HEN waiver coincided with the pandemic-related state of emergency. And what happened is folks that were enrolled in HEN stayed enrolled in that program, and that is now ending. So there was a waiver, and that is now ending now that the state of emergency is ending at the end of this month. We in King County have opted in to take an extension to this waiver ending, which gives us an extra 90 days, which is wonderful and amazing. To work with folks to make sure this information gets out to folks and to get folks reapplying. So what providers need to know is that if folks are enrolled currently in this program, they're going to be, letters are being sent out to folks, letting them know that this is ending, and they need to reach out to DSHS, reapply for this information, get reapproved before January 28th, okay? If folks miss that January 28th deadline, and then they get reapproved on January 29th or February 1st, they're gonna go back into the HEN queue, okay? Folks that get reapplied and re-eligible status before the 28th, their rent will continue to be paid through the HEN program. Now, some folks are going to no longer be eligible, likely because they have qualified for Social Security income. So some folks are going to drop off regardless, but some are going to be deemed ineligible, and they may actually still be eligible. They just have to kind of go through the re-eligibility process. So really, really important. We've got a blog about this that we have put out and is on our website now, and we've got a link that we can throw into the chat for folks that sort of shows a sample letter that CCS is sending out, you know, provides some of the information that folks need around this. There's also the Ask a Lawyer resource through Solid Ground. They can be a huge resource if people are running into issues or they think they're eligible and they're no longer getting re-upped on their eligibility. So big changes. Really want to make sure that folks are aware of this. So on that note, I want to hand it off to Teresa and Trisha to share a little bit of information about the HEN waiver ending, what's happening at CCS, clarify anything that needs to be clarified that I just said, talk a little bit about the TEN program, and then we should have some time for questions for folks on this. So Trisha and Teresa, please take it away.
Thank you so much. I actually have a very sore throat today, so I'm going to not speak a whole lot. But we did send out letters to all of the folks already. We've started receiving calls, and we've been redirecting folks to DSHS to reapply. We will be checking again before we actually exit folks January 28th. We will definitely be checking everyone again, just to be clear. I want people to understand that that's something that we're committed to do so that we don't accidentally exit anyone that should not be exited. We are also tracking folks that call us and tell us they're receiving SSI or SSDI, so that we can hopefully follow up with them and provide them with options. And I'll hang out and answer any questions specifically related to the waiver exit letters that were sent and the timeline. But I'm going to pass it off to Tricia right now to talk about our new exciting transportation and essential needs, also known as 10. Tricia, take it away.
All right. So 10 is kind of what we're calling internally the new way that we're going to start intaking folks into HIN in King County and Seattle. So starting in November, we are opening a walk-in center at the Phoenix Center, which is on 23rd and Rainier. And folks who get a DSHS eligibility letter will be able to come in with their letter, be able to enroll into 10, which we're just calling transportation and essential needs services of HIN only. And they'll be able to get that immediately. They'll be able to get their 1 year long ORCA card. They'll be able to get their monthly essential needs bag. And importantly, we'll be able to collect their information and data so that when we do start to have openings for rental assistance and utility assistance, we'll have these folks in our database, and we'll be able to figure out who meets the program criteria well and can transition them into that program more seamlessly. Not everybody that we will enroll in 10 will end up being right-sized for the HEN program, nor will we ever have slots to fill currently at current budget levels, we will never be able to serve the 8,000 people that are currently eligible. But we also are taking this as an opportunity to help divert these folks into other services as well. So they come in, they see us, we kind of have some light touch case management, and we'll be able to, hopefully direct some people into diversion services, some people into permanent supportive housing, help people get other resources that they need. So this is our opportunity now to kind of revamp how HEN's been working and be able to serve everybody, at least in some capacity, that comes to us with one of those DSHS eligibility letters. We're going to have walk-in hours starting Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday from like 10 to 2 down at the Phoenix Center. No appointments necessary. People just come in and be able to enroll with us with their DSHS letter. We'll check their eligibility and get them signed up for at least that to start. And then again, after the waiver, ends after January, at the end of January, we'll have a little time period where we're just kind of, making sure how much slots we have. And then, after that, then we'll be able to start moving some of those people into the program. So for providers, it's important for folks to know that they will have to enroll in the future into the transportation and essential needs only part to ever be able to sort of move over into the rental assistance part. So that's going to be our doorway coming over, instead of that really inequitable system that used to happen where people had to call the first of the month, get lucky, and then they weren't always even the right fit for the program. So that's our new program that hoping we're going to serve everybody a lot better, and then we'll have a better sense of everybody that has these service needs, and can do some more good advocacy work as well, try to get more people served.
Thank you both so much. We have a really great question in the chat. Is there any information about the HEN waiver ending anywhere online in other languages other than English?
Oh, great question. Not that I'm aware of, but we can certainly make that happen.
Yeah. Wonderful. Really appreciate that. I'm wondering, and I may regret this, but I'm going to follow my gut here. If there are top languages that might be helpful or useful, some of them I think we kind of know based just on the community we live in. But if you know that this is languages that might be helpful, could you throw that into the chat for us and we'll capture that? Thank you all. And then Teresa, I see your comment in the chat here. We will also be sending letters to folks to let them know about the walk-in hours, and folks can still call if that works for them. And yeah, hope is to get a yes for more folks. Yeah, you all are doing amazing work. Sarah here at the coalition and CCS have really worked hard, and folks at the county as well, to get this extension, which is huge for us to really identify folks properly. And Allison, I see you coming off mute, so take it away.
Thank you so much, Jody. I did just want to say, to reiterate the thanks and acknowledgement of our partners and members at Catholic Community Services and our partners at King County DCHS. And I want to just underscore something, because this is the space that we all are here for at our meetings, right? This is why this coalition exists, because what happens on the ground for people currently experiencing homelessness or housing instability, or for people who were homeless and are now housed but are still poor, intersects with policy every day, all the time. And you all bringing information to us, and us going out into different layers of government and bringing information together, gives us the synergy to provide better services for people. I was shocked to learn this, but I think it's really important to say briefly today. The state DSHS gave every county the option to extend the HEN waiver for 3 months. Only King County, because of advocacy by this coalition and CCS, took that option. So what we're doing here today by sharing this information with you, and you take it back to your folks, is making sure that for 3 more months, people have their rent paid, and we have the opportunity to help people transition to what they need. We should be proud of that, even as we are horrified that that's not happening for people in other parts of the state. So that's just my little editorial expansion about the power of our connecting on policy and advocacy. Thanks, Jody.
Thanks, Allison. Well said. And you're getting some shocks of horror, rightfully so, in the chat, because it's awful to think that folks across the state are not getting the same level of care and attention. We still have a couple minutes on our agenda, so I do see another question in the chat. What is the correct fit to be in 10? What are some of the things that will not allow you to be approved?
I can answer that. Actually, anybody that is approved for HEN and gets that letter and walks in will be enrolled in 10. So I don't know that there's actually a correct fit. Once they're enrolled and we've had a chance to get to know them a bit, then we'll be able to fit them, or not fit them, find the right fit for them in terms of whether it's HEN rent assistance eventually, or if it's, again, permanent supportive housing or another opportunity. If folks need more support, which we do find is often the case, we want to make sure that we can get them that through the other internal programs in CCS. If they just need shelter, if they don't want housing and they just need transportation assistance, that's fine too. Or if they only want the essential needs bag, or if, say, they're on a voucher already but they want to get some additional support, we're there for that too. So I think anyone that receives the DSHS letter saying that they have been approved should check out what options that we have, and we'll meet people where they're at and probably continue to grow and evolve.
Thanks, Teresa. And I saw that you answered this in the chat, but for the good of the group and anybody that's not able to see the chat, there was another question about, so can people call to enroll in 10, or do they have to go in person? And Teresa answered they can call or walk in, their choice, whatever is easiest. And then there was a follow-up question. What are the walk-in hours? And do they start November 1st?
They don't start November 1st. We're looking at a November 15th start date. We've had to ramp up with some staff that we still have to onboard and do a few more things to the Phoenix Center to make it as welcoming as we'd like for the clients. Right now, we're planning walk-in hours Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday from 10 to 2. And we're going to see how that goes, because to be fair, we don't know how many of these 5,000 other people that are out there that we're not currently touching are going to come in. So we'll send out some letters inviting folks to come, see how many people come and engage with us, and until we reach everybody. So it is a little bit of a pilot to just sort of see how it might be really busy, it might be not as busy. We're just not quite sure yet. So
Great. And another question, is there any page or link for more information on 10? And if so, throw it into the chat. You can also share it with the coalition. We'll be doing our usual blog follow-up as well for more information. Oh, go ahead, Trish.
Oh, I was just going to say that no, we don't have it up on our website yet, but we will soon. And just so you all know, we're not externally calling it 10 to everybody because we don't want to confuse people. We feel that if people hear 10 hen on the phone, it's going to get confusing. So just kind of in our literature that's going out publicly, we're just going to call it transportation and essential needs only. So you can sign up now with hen for transportation and essential needs only, and then you may be enrolled for in rental assistance. We will contact you if that becomes available. So just to be clear.
Great. Thank you so much. And yeah, Allison is saying a future general membership might be a fuller presentation more than just the quick and dirty in our October. So we can talk more about that. I would like to invite you both, if it's okay, to throw your contact into the link, or the best contact for folks who have questions, follow-up questions. And I really appreciate you both being here to share this super important information, answer questions. And Anne, I do see your question in the chat, and we will follow up with our hen colleagues sort of offline and get more information on that, or we can continue in the chat. But I'm going to move us on to voter registration. So the general election is November 8th. It's a Tuesday, and we just in the past 2 days listening to NPR in the morning, I have heard in 2 different states misinformation happening at pretty high levels of government and through the state around, specifics to those states. It was Florida and it was in Montana today. And so the coalition is deeply committed to ensuring that everyone that, has the right to vote, and there's a lot of us through, and it's changed, can vote, removing those barriers and helping to share the correct information so people can actually exercise that right? So lots of people are eligible, but if you can't actually exercise it, not super helpful. So we're here to bring those things as close together as possible. So I'd like to pass it off to my colleague, Tim, to share some really important information with you. So Tim, please take the floor.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jody. Yeah, like Jody said, Election Day is rapidly approaching. We have some really important races coming up, but more importantly, we are advocating that everyone who is able to vote, eligible to vote, does vote. We've been busy doing a bunch of different voter registration, engagement, and education events. We have done, let's see, looking at my tracker here, we've done about 15 this year so far. We're a little bit busy up until November 8th, but I do want to put it out there. If anybody's interested in having any of their clients engaged, if you are looking for tabling on site or education about kind of the significance of voting and eligibility for voting, if a person is unhoused, if a person has a past felony conviction, let us know. I'm putting my email in the chat really quick. This is the best way to reach us about that. Yeah, I want to let you know that we also have a couple other resources available. We have one-pagers for new voters. We have resource guides. We have voter restoration posters. Email me if you'd like anything that can get out the word that folks can vote. There are some important things to know this year. As of 2022, there was a significant law change in Washington state that a person who has any past felony conviction in Washington, including folks who are currently under confinement of, folks who are currently under supervision from community corrections can vote. So you can vote if you are under any supervision from DOC, whether if you are not currently incarcerated in prison. That's a really big deal. We've estimated that anywhere, what was it, like 20,000 people in Washington may be affected. And many more people may be unaware. Just knowing that in other states, while people who have felony convictions are eligible to vote, people may not know that. People may see other really terrible things happening in other states with people being disenfranchised because of a felony conviction and assume that they're not able to. So in Washington, we are one of the most progressive states in terms of allowing people to vote with past felony convictions. You also don't need a residential address to vote. On a voter registration form, you can add a essentially anywhere a person spends time. You do not need to have a permanent residence. Also, to register to vote, either via mail through the paper, which we have if you need any, or at an in-person voting center, you do not need a Washington State ID. You can give the last 4 of your social security number. So those are really important things to know to pass on to your clients, and we will definitely repeat this in a follow-up email and blog to folks. I do want to share just a couple important dates before I pause and take questions. So the 31st, Halloween, happy Halloween to everybody. That is an important date, knowing that after that date, a person must register at an in-person voting center to register to vote. That is the deadline for registering via mail, via paper form, or online. So we have about 11 days that a person can register online or via a paper form. And then November 8th, that is election day. You can vote in a lot of ways before then. You can vote at an in-person voting center before 8 p.m. We have a list of locations on our website. You could drop it in a drop box in anywhere in King County by 8 p.m. or have it postmarked by your ballot, postmarked to your ballot by USPS by 5 p.m. on the 8th. So as long as you get your ballot in that by those times on that day, November 8th, you are good to vote. Ben, I see that you have your hand raised. What's going on?
Actually, I think to some degree you also answered one of my questions, which is that, yeah, you can register to vote. I think it's pretty much right up to the date to voting day. And you can do that simply by walking into any of the in-person centers and just register to vote. And no, you don't need ID. With homeless people, one of the problems is, we do mail-in voting. So a lot of people think, well, I don't really have an address. Yeah, you can still vote. And that's probably one of the things that that interferes with things. Another thing about registering, at least in King County, is King County doesn't check for ineligibility or anything. They're much more lenient in King County for registration than other counties. Other counties might present some barriers, but in King County, we don't have any barriers. You can just go and register. Yeah, there are other counties that provide barriers for homeless people, obviously, and thankfully we don't. And yes, voting matters. It's not just about, what's going on out in the big world out there, but what happens locally. Our local elections are extremely important to maintaining the systems, the progressive systems that we have. So.
Thank you, Ben. I think
Yeah.
you've made some really important points. And what I will just reiterate and highlight for everybody is we do have a very low barrier system for folks, right? So just want to be really clear that, there are other eligibility that we haven't highlighted because it's kind of the standard stuff, right? So you still have to be 18 to vote. You still have to be a resident of Washington State for at least 30 days prior to that election you're going to vote in. You have to be a US citizen. That comes up a lot for folks. And what we've been out in the community, people are really interested in this process and wanting to do it, but don't have that citizenship yet. As Tim already mentioned, and the big thing is those past felony convictions. What we like to say is, assuming that you meet all those other eligibility criteria, if they're standing in front of you, they can register. Right? It's really, really wonderful. And that is something that folks don't know about. I mean, Tim and I are out in the community often and can't tell you how many people are like, what? Or even still think that their court fines or their legal financial obligations are a barrier. That is just not true. And our King County Elections Office is an amazing group of folks that does really due diligence to ensure that there is no voter fraud, and they are checking to make sure that folks are eligible. And we do have a very low barrier system, and it's a very strong human system that is looking at those things and creating a lot of different avenues and pathways for people to actually get in there and vote. So just wanted to sort of highlight and re-clarify that. And then I'm going to hand it back to Tim. I'm a chatter, I'm a talker, and I took the floor from him. So I apologize, and I hand it back to you for some more information.
No, thank you for reiterating that, Jody, and I appreciate your input as well, Ben. Yeah, it is definitely easier to be a voter in King County than other places. Still, a barrier is people not knowing that they can vote. So definitely let folks know. In terms of, Jody was saying, we live in a great space in which voting is pretty free and fair. If you're interested in maintaining that, there are a couple opportunities in the community, one of which is offered by the League of Women Voters. It's an event coming up called Election Reform Advocacy Forum. I'm just going to pop the link in the chat really quick. This is a fantastic nonpartisan event. If you are passionate about keeping elections free and fair, check it out. Just kind of a segue into community events. And then there is one other event that we are talking about today. One big countywide election that race that's happening during this election is for King County Prosecutor. That is a really pivotal race that impacts how a lot of people in our community interact with the criminal justice system. There is going to be an event at Twin Lakes Golf Course in Federal Way today at 6 p.m. It's going to be an in-person only debate. We will post information about this, but I believe, sorry, I'm reading off of a script right now. I am just going to pop in a previous debate if anyone is interested in this rate in this chat. This is a link to a YouTube video. Ben, what's up?
There's a couple of events I wanted to mention. the Recovery Cafe does this really cool like resource fair, which is happening tomorrow from like 11 to 2 or something down at their Soto facility. And our organization and other service agencies and so forth will be there. They usually have the Seattle veterinary outreach people there for pets, and all sorts of resources are there. It's a really cool event. So let everyone know that it's happening. And if you've never been, check it out. It's just really, really cool. And since this might be something that people are interested in on a political level.
Well, and Ben, I might actually
Yeah.
ask you to throw it into the chat just
Okay.
because we usually have a time for member announcements at the end, but
Okay,
we've got
Will
a pretty
do.
tight schedule, so I appreciate that. Thank you. And I did throw the information and address for the Recovery Cafe event because it is wonderful. You are correct about that. So Tim, any final thoughts on voter reg, and then we'll hand it off to Allison for advocacy.
Yeah, one last thing regarding some of these ongoing voter registration events. So we're doing this because we want to make it easy for you and your clients to vote, and we want to know how we can support you. If you want us, again, at any of your spaces so that we can provide voter education or registration information, let us know. We also know that you're busy. However, we are interested if you happen to know anybody who has capacity to volunteer at any of these tabling or education events. Let us know if you have any, perhaps any college student colleagues, any retiree colleagues. We'd really love to bring passionate folks to our tables. Looking for folks who could spend maybe 2 or 3 hours between now and November 8th. Again, you can email me at tim@homelessinfo.com. And I think that's about it. I appreciate everyone's time.
Thank you, Tim. Great information around voting. And as Tim mentioned, like that election's coming fast and furious at us. So we have a ton of resources that we are happy to share with you. Allison, let's talk budget. Let's get folks riled up. Let's get into this. We're excited. Take it away.
Thanks, Jody. All right, well, good morning, everyone. I think that the combination of the air quality and the fact that we have a continuing crisis that sometimes seems to be addressed more with rhetoric than with resources is giving me a little bit of a headache, but I am really considering this meeting to be better than ibuprofen because there is really nothing better than the solidarity of being able to do something about our condition collectively. And that is also part of what the coalition exists for. So I thank everyone for being here this morning. We have just shared a lot of information with you that we hope helps you do your work better in all the different places that you are working. And we know that what is happening in every single one of our member and partner organizations is that on top of the crisis of homelessness and the crisis of the lack of affordable homes and the COVID-19 pandemic, which continues despite the fact that the state of emergency is coming to a legal end, we also have a crisis in our workforce. And that's because the pay is too low for this essential work. I see you nodding and I appreciate it. And I hope that you are looking at each other and seeing that you are not alone. As Jody said at the top of this meeting, one of the things that is pernicious about our current time is that we are doing this over Zoom. We're glad we have the platform, but it's not like being in a room together. So we want to start with a few photos to remind you and us of what it looks like when we get to be in spaces together. And I'm so grateful. I want to give a shout out to our friends from OPEIU Local 8 who are here. You want to give a wave, Corinne and Phoebe and whoever else might be here. Thank you, welcome. You'll be hearing shortly from them. The other organized labor partners are represented, I think, by John Rios, who's here from 1199 Northwest in his capacity as both a member of that labor union and a staff person at DESC. And then we also have wonderful partners here from the Coalition Ending Gender-Based Violence and from the Solidarity Budget. So you are not alone. We are not alone. We are in coalition as a coalition with many others. And I want to just invite you to take a look at this photo. This is, I believe, June 2019. One of multiple occasions when together we packed the council chambers at City Hall. Look at that, no social distancing. And this is, you know, this is what it looks like when advocacy, persistence, smarts, and keeping our eyes on the prize looks like. I want to recognize that we have people in this room who were part of this campaign. So please start thinking, if you are in this picture or have a friend or ally who was in this picture, or if you were one of the many, many other people by the hundreds who sent emails, made public comment, got your allies to show up virtually and in person, and won the first in the nation legislation to make sure that human services contracts keep up with inflation. Now, obviously, there's more to this story. That's part of why we have a fight on our hands right now, but just let that soak in a little. And then I asked the lovely Rachel Marr to please put just a quick little slideshow together to remind us about the kind of solidarity and camaraderie that we can generate. So I think Rachel's got a couple more photos to share. There's Pete and Andrew Koch from Compass and DESC with our Adjust for Inflation signs. Oh, I'm blanking on this wonderful person's name, but she gave a powerful, powerful testimony. If I'm not mistaken, a DESC staffer, and her name will come to me in a moment. A little spread of friends, the El Centro de la Raza, that's Estela Ortega, Patricia Hayden from the YWCA, folks from Plymouth, I believe, and who else have we got here? Oh, these are wonderful people from Neighborhood House. Patricia Hayden again from the Y with the Seattle Human Services Coalition, our advocacy partners. A fabulous lineup of folks from the Salvation Army, DV, and other shelter programs. And that's Seattle City Council member Teresa Mosqueda speaking at the rally that we had on the steps of City Hall before one of the hearings on the legislation. Thank you so much, Rachel. Let's just come back together for a minute, and I want to just invite you, raise your hand if you were part of this campaign. You can do it literally or figuratively. So thank you so much. I think I'd like to just say a couple more words and then invite Phoebe, who raised their hand, excuse me, Phoebe. Phoebe was both part of the campaign then and is part of the campaign now, and their role has changed, and I think it's really valuable for all of us to hear from them about that. But just in case you haven't been following the news, which I think you probably have, we passed that legislation in 2019 because we knew that there's a structural problem. Government contracts with community-based organizations to provide core services, homeless services, housing services, childcare, elder care, healthcare, and yet those contracts almost never cover the full cost of doing the work, including the actual cost of paying people a decent wage to do it. That is not a problem that's going to get solved with one piece of legislation or in one budget cycle, which is why our Essential Workers campaign is a multi-year, multi-pronged effort. And we are never going backwards. Just like we are not going backwards with people experiencing homelessness, being asked to sleep on mats on the floor 6 inches away from each other from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. We're not going backwards in your paychecks. We are not going backwards in what it is acceptable for government to subcontract with community-based organizations to do. And although Mayor Bruce Harrell, when he was a city council member, was among the 9 council members who voted unanimously to pass this ordinance, as mayor, he sent down a budget which frankly shocked the hell out of us, because he literally balanced the budget by cutting the pay of human services workers in his proposed budget. Mayor Harrell should know better. And I think that Mayor Harrell has already gotten a taste of how unacceptable that is to us, to our allies on the city council, and to the general public. It simply doesn't make sense, because we know that it is not possible to make progress, to house people and help people while they are homeless, and house people so they're not homeless anymore, when you cannot staff adequately and safely the programs that currently exist. This is very straightforward. No one here, I think, needs that to be explained to them, but we all need to practice how we explain this publicly to our neighbors, to our family members, and to our elected officials. The legislation that we passed would require the city to put a 7.6% inflation adjustment in place. Now, let's be clear, that's really not adequate, because inflation is 9.5%. But there are some complicated reasons why that ordinance took an average of the previous 12 months. And 7.6% would help, but we know that you all deserve a raise. In fact, the mayor claims to have proposed a 4% inflation adjustment, but because of the way they did the calculation, it's really 1.2%. Not going to happen. We're very grateful to Councilmember Teresa Mosqueda, Councilmember Lisa Herbold, and other council members who are already taking action at this stage in the budget process. But I want to tell you, what we're talking about here this morning is what we're going to do in the next 32 days. That's how long we have before the final budget vote. And we have a lot of work to do to make sure that that full inflation adjustment is in place and that other funding is in place to preserve programs. We're also doing some work to try to ensure that the harm done by sweeps to people who are unsheltered is minimized. And we will talk about that if we have time at the end. But now I would really love to invite Phoebe and John. I don't see you here, but if you're here, would you be so kind as to just send me a little message or come on camera? Phoebe Felcher, a person whom I previously only knew through email advocacy during the pandemic. But I got a chance to meet Phoebe in person when we launched the Essential Workers campaign over the summer with Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal and State Representative Nicole Macri at one of the Health Through Housing sites in North Seattle. Phoebe, welcome. Would you be so kind as to introduce yourself to the people and say a little bit about your role in this work?
Hi, thank you so much. I'm honored to speak to all of you. My name's Phoebe. I use they, them pronouns. I'm a union rep at Local 8. And before I worked at Local 8, I was a housing case manager at Plymouth Housing. And before that, I worked in homeless services in Santa Cruz, California. So, oh, wow, I can see myself now. So, God, that city council meeting feels like so long ago now. So much has happened since then, and I've changed a lot since that meeting, but it was really, I'm so grateful to both Local 8 and to Skitch for recruiting me into that. I had a lot of opinions about what was going on. I was angry. I know firsthand that homeless services workers are not paid enough. They haven't been probably ever. And it's just not right. You know, you're the first people that get thanked, and there needs to be money attached to that. You do not have to suffer. We cannot exploit your compassion and your dedication to this cause. It's awful. It's wrong. So I was really nervous to speak at the city council meeting, and honestly skeptical as to whether it would make any difference at all. And it was really empowering to see it work. And it propelled me to continue organizing and to get more involved in this kind of work. So I'm excited that we're doing this. We're all working together, and I'm honestly optimistic that we will be able to push back on this. Yeah, it is truly unacceptable, and we need to stand up and say so. Also, just for the record, I found out at the meeting that there's nothing, I don't know if this is true this time around, but there's nothing about, like, in the inflationary adjustment that guarantees that that money is going to go to wages. It could also go to like rent or other costs that are increasing. So just a plug that we do need unions to be pushing on those employers to use that additional money for wages and allocate it to workers. So I was drawn to the work because I don't want anyone to be ostracized. I don't want anybody to be excluded. And I met the best people doing homeless advocacy, homeless services work. And I feel like deeply honored that I get to continue to do that and to advocate for folks. So we won back then, and let's do it again. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Phoebe. And you raise a really important point, which is part of, the policy detail here. Without taking up too much time, you're absolutely right. That inflation adjustment is just an inflation adjustment on the contract. And there was a push to encourage the contracted agencies to dedicate as much of the resource as possible to wages and to paying their staff. And that is both appropriate and also the reason that we know that 7.6% isn't enough, because the fact of the matter is agencies are still being underpaid to do things like repair their elevators, pay for the utility bills that may indeed have gone up because inflation is affecting all sorts of costs. And so part of what we want to be really clear about in our advocacy is that that is the minimum to keep from going deeper into the hole. So the first thing we need is to stop the backward slide, but we also need to increase the value of the contracts and to pay people for the value of the work, as you so beautifully said, Phoebe. I want to just highlight that you mentioned that you were not entirely confident when you made your first public comment. I put in the chat, at least I think I did, I'm doing too many things at once, the link for everybody here to sign up to give public comment. And we are going to ask you to focus right now on signing up to give public comment on Tuesday, October 25th. That's next Tuesday. That is at 9:30 a.m. And in a little bit here, but right before we close this part of the agenda out, I'm going to ask Tim to help do a little role play with me to help you all feel confident that you know how to sign up starting at 7:30 a.m. We will support you. We will give you draft talking points, but truly you don't need them. You know what to say. You know how to be authentic and powerful about who you are, what work you do, whom you work with and for, and why inflation is the bare minimum that the city needs to do to keep current programs open. What we've been saying is that the city and the county have to invest in the core in the 23-24 budgets, get that little rhyme there, invest in the core in 23-24, and they have to do more. So what we are asking for is the 8.7% that the Social Security Administration of the United States just gave to 70 million Americans. That is the biggest anti-poverty program that we run in some respects in this country. And the 8.7% COLA for Social Security recipients in 2023 is the biggest cost of living adjustment in that program in 40 years. And it's necessary, as anyone who's living on Social Security or SSDI knows. And as you know, many of our folks are living on that, if they're lucky. And, and in fact, last year, the Social Security Administration also gave a significant cost of living adjustment because inflation was so high. Why am I telling you this? Because first of all, we never want to ask for the minimum, and the 7.6% is the minimum. And second of all, we want to be really clear that we want the full 7.6%. Last year, Mayor Durkin's budget proposed 3%. And council members used one-time money to add 2.8%, which we fought hard for. And that total of 5.8% needs to be the base budget on which calculations are now made going forward, because inflation didn't back off. So that is an important matter of millions of dollars. And right now we are educating council members, including some of our allies, about what that full 7.6% means. So when you see our language about full 7.6%, that's what it's about. I see a few little questions in the chat about the public comment. Yes, it's virtual, and we will share information about that. We're also going to have an email action alert, and that will probably launch on Monday. And we're also doing some advocacy at King County. So I want to just briefly turn things over, if I can, just for a couple minutes, to our friend and colleague Amarinthia Torres from the Coalition Ending Gender-Based Violence. We have a lot of overlap, of course, in our members and our issues in the work in the community. Amarinthia and Dennis Sills from Plymouth, and Beza from the King County Alliance for Human Services, and I struggled through the not very good public comment, virtual public comment last night at the King County Council, but we made it, and we're going to support you and make it easier for you going forward. And Amarinthia, please go right ahead.
Okay, well, I'm not really, wasn't sure I was be speaking today, but happy to just share some tips, I guess, about the public speaking process, public comment process. It's very confusing on the King County's website around how to sign up. They kind of give conflicting instructions a bit about whether you can be unmuted or muted if you call into the Zoom app. From my perspective, from my experience, I logged into the Zoom app on my computer. And when it came time to give public comment for my name, they called my name that I had entered into the Zoom app. And then it had a button that randomly popped up that said unmute. And I clicked that, and then I was able to speak. But in the process of leading up to that, there was other public commenters who were sharing that because it was set up as a webinar, that people really weren't actually able to unmute themselves. And so there were several people at the beginning who didn't get a chance to speak because there was some kind of confusion around whether I think that pop-up was happening for them. So I was actually dual, same as Allison. I was actually on my phone. I was quickly calling into the number they had listed on my phone, as well as being on the Zoom to just cover bases and figure out how do we actually give public comment. So once they did the pop-up on the Zoom, there was like an echo. And so I had to close out the phone really quickly and try to speak to them quickly to be able to give public comment. But it was definitely, given that it was hybrid, I think it just was a little clunky, and I'm hopeful that there can be some feedback about how to make that a little more streamlined. And I'm not sure what the city side has been like on that front, but that was some of my that was some of my experience.
It's much easier, Amarinthia, and we are, based on last night, going to give some feedback very quickly. I wonder if you want to just give 1 or 2 pointers about what makes good public comment.
Oh, great. Sure. You know, I feel like I'm still learning on some of that. I've just been doing policy for the Coalition Ending Gender-Based Violence for a little bit now, but I think, you know, something I try to think about is I try to get to the point of what I'm asking for fairly quickly, because I know I tend to run out of time sometimes trying to pack too much in there. So I try to really make sure that's at the front. And I really try to give people and council members, I try to use plain language and speak to what the importance of the work that we do. I think there's such a surprisingly lack of understanding about what human service workers do, like the actual work we're doing from our council members. And sometimes even just explaining in very plain language, in very plain terms, the work we're doing day in and day out, the impact that it's having on survivors in our community, and really trying to give tangible examples of that. I try to keep it not too abstract or, we talk a lot in our field about root causes. And so I try to do a little bit of that around the connections to our work with oppression and systemic racism and all those things. But I try to keep that pretty, I try to just use plain language as much as possible. And those are some things that have helped me. And I think being very specific around what the recommendation is, I really try to use strong language around what we're recommending and strong language around what we deserve. I think there's a lot of benefit to using positive frames that people just don't hear as much around, like survivors deserve dignity and survivors deserve, at least for our field, survivors deserve that when they take the risk of disclosing and reaching out, that they deserve a response, a holistic response back. And the only way we can do that is with, appropriate funding and appropriate resources to meet that need. So those are a couple of things that I try to think about, but it's, but I do almost always run out of time. So I still have to work on being concise.
Understood, but those are wonderful tips. Thank you. And
Sure,
Amarynthia, I really think we'd like to maybe just have a little drop-in session in partnership with you to give folks the opportunity to ask some questions or practice some of the messaging and think about how to take what might be a deficit frame and put it in a positive frame. That's a very powerful and important tactic. And I think all of you have really great ideas about how to give comment. Anicia, you asked a really great question in the chat. So is the public comment time limit 2 minutes? This is a really interesting thing. It depends. Sometimes if council members at the city or the county are trying to fit a lot of people's comments in, they shorten it to 60 seconds. I've even seen them shorten it to 30 seconds, but generally speaking, 2 minutes. I will say it is both a lot of time and a little bit of time. So sometimes very effective public comment is just 60 seconds and you can just walk away from the virtual microphone. But are you able to give someone else your time? That's also a great question. Thank you. I have not seen that happen in the virtual format. I have seen it happen when we've been there in person, and both city and county are transitioning to attempting to do hybrid model meetings and to have the in-person option. So one of the things that I want to transition us to very quickly here is to hear from our friends at the Solidarity Budget, who are wonderful allies in many ways, including in thinking about how to be very powerful in showing up in person, because showing up in person to give public comment is one tactic. Showing up in person the way we did at the rally or with signs and wearing the same colors is another way, even if you don't get to speak. And we've got some ideas about ways that people can participate. So thank you for those questions. We're gonna have like a drop-in public comment warm-up session for folks. You can give us a thumbs up if you think that's a good idea, but I think it could be really very fun. We're also working on a tip sheet about public comments. Great. And what I hope we are going to focus in on is actually replicating the rally that we did in 2019, because I think we need to see each other. I think an outdoor rally is a COVID appropriate approach, provided the air quality allows for it. And I think it gives a boost to our allies on city council and in city hall to understand these are real people doing this essential work, hard work, necessary work that everybody in this city counts on, and they deserve much, much more than they are getting. and the resources to do what you all are tasked with doing. So we do this in solidarity with each other and in solidarity with folks like the people working on the solidarity budget. I'm so grateful to Angelica Chazaro, who is here today, took time to join us, and I'm gonna turn things over to her to explain a little bit about what that coalition work looks like and what they've got in the works. Thank you very much, Angelica.
Yeah, thank you so much, Allison. It really is an honor to be here with you all. You know, my first job out of college was as a case manager in a domestic violence shelter, and I feel like so much of what I've done since then comes from everything I learned from that incredibly hard job. So yeah, I'm with the Seattle Solidarity Budget, and we're a cross-movement coalition that came together in 2020 after the uprising, at a time when the mayor was trying to get us to basically compete with each other for funding. And when I say us, I mean, you know, labor, transportation, environmental justice, housing justice, arts groups, racial justice groups. And so we decided to respond to the invitation to compete for funding, for new funding, with basically forming the Solidarity Budget Coalition. And so now for the third year in a row, we're working together to present a budget that we dropped before the mayor's budget that basically would rise to the level of all of the crises, overlapping crises that we're facing, right? And so since our first year, one of our priorities has been pay for human services workers, because for us, you all are the true public safety workers. I mean, that's where, if public safety is happening in the city, it's because of the work you all are doing, right? This year, because of the super dire conditions we're seeing with like record deaths of our unhoused neighbors, record deaths in the King County Jail, record traffic death, like transit deaths of cyclists and pedestrians, we framed our budget around a budget to live, right? So what would it mean to actually budget to end homeless deaths, to end, you know, the record suicides in the jail, to end traffic deaths? And so we put that ask out, including raises for human services workers. And so we were super extra horrified to see the mayor's budget, which includes, you know, what basically amounts to a budget cut for your contracts. And because we look at the budget as a whole, we're considering this in the context of SPD, the police department, getting 17 million apart from, you know, the hundreds of millions they already get, but getting an extra 17 million for vacant positions. So they get to keep $17 million for positions they have no plans or ability to fill. And they get to decide what to spend that on. So they're like new tasers, new guns, you know, retention bonuses, hiring bonuses, you know, meanwhile, you all are getting a pay cut, right? So it's incredibly upsetting to us. And so as we continue to push for your raises, because we think that's what will create more safety in the city, we also want to put it in the context of we can't keep investing and putting money into like empty positions, what we're calling ghost positions. And so we wanted to invite you all to be part of these joint efforts to push for this budget that works for all of us across our different movements. And so we're going to have a week of action starting on Halloween, where we'll have a ghost cop action at City Council. We're also going to have, we're working with folks who push against sweeps to do an actual sweep of City Hall, so you can show up with your brooms. And then we would love to be part of supporting any action or rally that you all do to sort of like end that week, because we do think all our fights are so connected. And when we show up for each other, you know, we win. You know, we're so excited to see that win in 2019 that you all had. And I think that we are able, you know, if we're able to sort of bring that energy across our different fights and not allow ourselves to be pitted against each other, we can win what we need to from this budget cycle. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you so much. When we show up for each other, we win. That is solidarity in a nutshell. Does anyone have any questions for Angelica? And Angelica, do you want to offer any links in the chat for folks? I see people saying, where can we see more details on these actions? Of course, we will share it out as we get it from you and your colleagues, but feel free to put anything in the chat, or we will share things out with people following this meeting. And I think, wonderful. Thank you so much. So Angelica has put the website, seattlesolidarityBudget.com, into the chat. This is a group that has really lived what solidarity means. And I find the work inspiring and smart. And I thank you so much for taking the time to join us. And and for your solidarity. And I want to add just one more thought. You know, we say advocacy works, and it does, because frankly, for many years, the only time any additional shelter opened in this community was because of on-the-ground advocacy by folks like all of us. It is essential that we build on past victories and learn from our past losses. And the thing about advocacy is it is powerful and it works and it never ends. So we won in 2019, and that's the reason that we are going to push back successfully against what the mayor's budget proposes. And by the way, the budget proposal wasn't just a 1.2% increase instead of 7.6%. It also included a proposal that is still on the table to undo that 2019 law. So how we show up now isn't going to win us everything we need. How we show up now is a step on the journey. It is also a demonstration of collective power and our collective ability to say, oh no, you don't get to have things go backwards. We are going forwards. And if you are serious about ending homelessness and about reducing the number of people who suffer and die on the streets and in the parks of our communities, which we hope you are, then join us in lifting up the workforce who are essential to doing this work. That's the simple version of the message. We will be revisiting some of these basics. I see a question about 2019. We need to wrap up this section of the agenda, but we are so grateful to all the folks who do this work behind the scenes, in places that we can't necessarily see each other, but we really want to invite you to sign up. I want to ask Tim or Jody if you could please put the link in the chat. This is so you can sign up on the right dates. We want to be present at every public comment session for the city council and the county council between now and when they take the budget votes right before the Thanksgiving break. And it won't be over then, because the King County Regional Homelessness Authority has to then redo their budget based on what the allocations are, and their budget needs to be approved. And we need to make sure that all of the priorities are actually honored all the way through the budget process. So if you are actually confident and ready to give public comment, fabulous. We're with you. We will cheer you on. Amanda, thank you for the incredible work you're doing to lift up youth voices. And if you're not so sure, or you just aren't a public speaker, no problem. We want to hear from you too. You can hold up a sign and take a selfie. You can have a little staff meeting. You can involve the folks whom you work with, who are guests, residents, or clients, in a non-coercive way. But if they're interested, as the young folks are interested in saying what it feels like to be seeking services and care and stability in a place where the staff turnover undermines that, then please, by all means, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we are using social media, and we are going to show up in person, and we really invite you to help make that possible. I need to do a quick little time check here. My gosh, what time is it? Oh my gosh. Well, we have 1 minute, Tim. Can we do this? Thank you.
Take a couple extra. This is important.
Thank you, Jody. So we were chatting in our preparation for this membership meeting yesterday, and Tim and I kind of accidentally discovered this following little role play that we're going to do for you. Tim, do you know how to sign up to give public comment at the Tuesday, October 25th Seattle budget meeting?
I sure do, Allison. I'm going to share my screen, and I am going to walk you through how to do that. So the URL to visit will be posted in the chat as well, seattle.gov/council/committees/public-comment. There are a couple different ways to do it here. You could deliver written comment via emailing all of your council members. it's a great thing to do for lots of different reasons. You can also sign up to speak remotely during that comment, during that hearing. So just going to this page, scrolling all the way down, there's a form that opens 2 hours prior to the start of the meeting. So if you access it now, you won't be able to submit for public comment. It would have to be 2 hours before. So on the 25th at 9:30 a.m. on this coming Tuesday, you'd be able to sign up starting at 7:30 a.m.
And let's just take a pause here. Thank you, Tim. Let's just take a pause here and say, we, the coalition, will send you a reminder the day before so that you don't miss that sign up. And if you're in transit or dropping your kid off at childcare, or you're actually not able to sign yourself up, we can sign you up. What we need is your first name, your last name, your email address, the phone number from which you will be calling in. And I think everything else is optional, but we will double check that. So we will help you guys do this. And I want to tell you one last thing. When the mayor's budget dropped, we weren't planning for this to be the advocacy that we focused on. We were planning to advocate for raises, because the whole reason we passed the ordinance in 2019 was so that we didn't have to keep fighting to address inflation. But obviously, we have this fight and others on our hands. So, sorry, I just lost my train of thought here. That's how distracting it is to drop a budget like that we were not expecting. However, like the Scouts, we are prepared, perhaps more than they think we are. But when you are signing up in the sheet, we will give you a reminder, and we will make sure that you have the core talking points that we are suggesting. We also suggest that you say that you are a member of the Seattle-King County Coalition on Homelessness. And the thing that I was going to tell you is the mayor's budget dropped. The next day, the city council had their first budget committee meeting. And thanks to our partners at the Coalition Ending Gender-Based Violence, Youth Care, Plymouth, the Seattle Human Services Coalition, Seattle Food Committee, and several other organizations, we showed up in force. We made comments that day. The majority of comments were about this workforce inflation adjustment and wages issue, and about police accountability. I am sure there were solidarity budget folks there as well. And boy, did the council members get the message. This is the top priority for the budget chair. So we need to give Councilmember Mosqueda, Councilmember Herbold, Councilmember Morales, and others our support by showing up and give it to each other. So that's it. Thank you all. Thanks, Jody, for a couple extra minutes. This is an ongoing body of work, but it is a privilege to be in it together and to be in solidarity. And as you heard from Phoebe and Amaranthia and Angelica, you are in great company. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you all. I am going to, Allison mentioned this briefly at the beginning, and I'm just going to reiterate it. This budget advocacy that we are doing is just one aspect of our essential workers. And so we really welcome and invite you to join in this campaign. And this is another way with which you can find your place in this work, even if this moment of public comment is not quite it, right? We can, there's many ways to show up and be heard, and it doesn't all have to be public comment. And there's a lot more coming down the pike over the next year plus around this. Listening to our colleagues, clearly there's a lot that we have to fight for in many, many aspects, right? We want you all right alongside us as we do this, and we want to be right alongside you in the efforts that you all are doing in your individual spaces and communities. We've got a couple minutes, so I'm going to throw a few things into the chat. We already threw in the Recovery Cafe resource fair that's happening tomorrow, where we will be doing voter registration along with a number of other amazing colleagues and community. We have been talking about public loan forgiveness, but we've got another federal loan student debt. So pass that link around. If you haven't heard it, get it going. Super easy. I mean, there's like almost nothing to do. I mean, you basically enter it in and they'll be like, we'll get back to you and we'll tell you if we need anything more. So, and then just want to make sure that you all have the links for our November and December meetings, right? So certainly we're probably going to be chatting about budget as well in November in some capacity. We are working on information around understanding public charge a little bit better and some changes that have happened around that. That's really key for you all to know because it's good news, which we all can use a little bit more of. And then the rest of that agenda is TBD in the works. And then we've also got our December meeting. We're going to extend that back out to 2 hours because that's our legislative preview. That's where we invite a lot of our colleagues who do a ton of policy and advocacy work to share out with us what their priorities for the legislative session is. And we usually have some elected officials to join us and tell us what they'll be working on. So a lot coming up. We've got just a couple minutes, so I invite folks to throw some stuff into the chat if you've got, job openings, volunteer opportunities, anything that you want to throw out there. And we've got a little time for maybe a couple announcements from members here, and just a nice little reminder. It's always helpful to let folks know what the ask is or how to refer folks to the service, what it is, make sure it's timely, something that's coming up right away here, but all those details that help folks actually share that information out or access that service. So I'm going to open the floor to anyone that has any announcements. So.
Oh my goodness, M. Auden. Hi there.
Well, hey there. saying hey from the, if you all don't know, I used to work at DESC for a long time and I'm over at King County these days. Watching us not have enough resources from a very different perspective, but
yeah.
What is true is that what I am seeing is that there is money out there. There are programs out there that are coming from the states and the feds, and the advocacy that Skitch does gets it actually to our folks on the ground.
Well, thank you so much for that shout out. And it's wonderful to see your name and hear your voice and know that you are our partner inside county government. I should say that we haven't touched on the fact that the planned additional shelter and behavioral health services for people experiencing homelessness and others in the SoDo or Chinatown International District site has been yanked. And there's a lot to be said about that. But what I am going to say right here and now is that means that there are one-time federal funds that need to be spent in this work. And that is why we are asking the King County Council to match the City of Seattle's 7.6% inflation adjustment. And that is one of the core asks that we have because we have to maintain services. Thank you so much, Phoebe.
It looks like we have a question from Elizabeth Maupin. I'm trying to learn why the mobile shower was cut from the budget and what alternatives are available. Does anybody have information about that?
There are a number of things that were cut in the mayor's budget. I think you're talking about the city of Seattle budget, Elizabeth, and that's one of the things that we and others are advocating around. The mayor basically cut funding from not fully realized hygiene and sanitation investments. And remarkably, the same exact dollar amount is going to graffiti removal. So I'm grateful to the city council members who see that as a mistaken redirection of resources. And that is why mayors and executives propose budgets and councils make the final decisions on budgets. But I want to underscore very short window of time for us to be heard on that and other issues. And actually, if I may, I just want to say one other thing that is a King County budget priority for us. Throughout this pandemic, the Healthcare for the Homeless Network at King County Public Health has provided indescribably essential care, information, coordination, support, and technical assistance to everyone on this call, all of our member organizations, direct services to people currently experiencing homelessness who were left and abandoned by the thousands outside during a global public health emergency. The Public Health Department received a lot of one-time funding, as they ought to have. But we have recently learned that the Healthcare for the Homeless Network staffing, because that one-time money is going away, is being reduced by over 75%. We are working really hard to find out what the implications of that are, but I think it doesn't take much imagination to know it's BAD bad. And of course, we will support the folks who are going to continue to do that work, but we want to see that the King County budget increases that investment in this year, because we cannot afford to lose those staff.
Thank you for that, Allison. Huge information that we learned pretty recently. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now.